Hello, I'm Marielle Gauthier, a certified executive personal coach. Welcome to the Power Up Your Retirement Lifestyle program, and welcome to our estate planning series. In this three-part series, we're going to cover the last will and testament, the power of attorney, and the Health Care Directive. In today's program, we're going to focus on the Health Care Directive, also known as a living will. The Health Care Directive is a very important document for you to consider as part of your estate planning. Today, our guest is going to explain what purpose they serve and what you need to consider when preparing one. Elizabeth Williamson is a lawyer in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. She has a general practice focusing on wills, estates, residential real estate, small business, and governance. Elizabeth enjoys helping her clients plan for their succession. She believes a valuable gift that we can all leave is an organized estate. Welcome, Elizabeth. So let's jump right in. What is a healthcare directive and who should have one?
A healthcare directive is a document that a person completes and signs that says the health treatment that they would like or any health care that they don't want. You would specifically say that you do not want, for example, if you don't want to have blood transfusions or if you do not want to be resuscitated, that type of thing you would put in a healthcare directive. It's a document. In Saskatchewan, if a person is unable to communicate to a healthcare provider and give consent to any treatment, then the healthcare provider is supposed to look to see if there's a healthcare directive, and if there is, then that would govern how they are to be treated.
Okay. So if I've had a chat with my doctor, okay, and I've told him absolutely no heroic measures, I do not want to be resuscitated, I don't want any blood transfusion. So I've talked to the doctor about that. He has it maybe on the file, but I don't have a healthcare directive. Then what happens? Do the healthcare personnel go back to the file or the doctor? Or?
No, they don't.
No.
So what would happen is, if you would present at emergency and you've passed out and you can't communicate, they would first look to see if you have a healthcare directive and if it says anything about how you want to be treated. If they can't find that, then they will contact your next of kin to get consent. And if they can't find anyone or are unable to contact someone who can give them consent, a healthcare provider needs another healthcare provider. There needs to be two signatures saying that the treatment is an emergency and they agree to provide it. Healthcare providers, it's their job to treat you, and so they will do that unless they have something that says that they shouldn't. The reason why they can't rely on a note in the file is, what you've said when you met with your doctor maybe 2 months in advance, and how you're feeling or what you want done on that day may differ. And so that's why they can't rely on it, or they just may not know. So the doctors in the emergency would have no idea that you've said something to a family doctor in a different office. So that's why you shouldn't rely on just telling your doctor.
Right, that makes sense, because you may have had a change of mind.
Yes.
Right, okay. You may have touched on this a little bit, but if you can just, expand a little bit more on it. What types of treatments does a healthcare directive usually address, or what kind of issues does it address?
Right. So there are some people who, for various reasons, do not want a blood transfusion, so you can address that. There are some people who are currently suffering from a certain condition, sometimes cancer or other conditions, and there's specific treatments that are available that they have tried or have just decided that they do not want to go that route. So you could explicitly say in the healthcare directive that you do not want to receive whatever that treatment might be. You can also state that you want to be able to receive anything for pain, even though it may cause your death to occur sooner. But the fact that you want to be able to be as comfortable as possible, and that would be in a situation where your death is imminent, and you would be asking for some pretty heavy duty You can also ask for things like do not resuscitate, no surgical intervention. Those are the more common ones.
Okay. So, I mean, let's say I fill one out. Okay. Do I register it with any organization? Like, I mean, it's not like I walk around with it, right? So if I get hit by a bus
Yeah.
and nobody can find my next of kin,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, that is an interesting dilemma. I don't think you can register it with anyone here in Saskatchewan. What you can do is you can give a signed copy to your doctor, or the hospital. If you're going into the hospital, they'll usually ask to see if you have anyone, if you're being admitted, if you have any healthcare directives, you can give it at that time. Some people. Usually these are more elderly people, will keep a copy on their fridge or in their freezer, and emergency healthcare providers are trained to look on the fridge or in the freezer for a healthcare directive. And some people do carry one in their purse or their wallet. So if you have one, and I highly recommend you tell your spouse or your next of kin that there is one, and even give them a copy.
That's a good point to make. I would even recommend that giving a copy, yes, but having that discussion with your partner, with your spouse, and your children, because I mean, I've had many a talk with all my siblings about my parents' care, and we weren't always in agreement.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's important for the children to know what mom or dad want. What do you think of that?
Well, that raises two things for me. One is that in Saskatchewan, in our healthcare directive, you can name a proxy who can make decisions for you. So, for example, the healthcare professional will first ask you for your consent, then they'll look to the form, if you have one, and if you have anyone named as a proxy, that's the next place they'll go. And in the ones that I draft, I include the proxy's phone number and some contact information to make it as easy as possible for them to contact the proxy. So you should discuss definitely with your proxy what type of health care you want. The proxy is required to comply with what you have indicated to them and the wishes that you have shared with them in the type of health care that they are consenting to. So if they may personally have a view about how they want to be treated, and it differs from yours, and they know it, they are legally bound to give what you would prefer, not what they would personally prefer. Yeah, I think that's also discussing it with your family, definitely with your spouse. If no one else, if you have a spouse or a partner, you should definitely just have a discussion with them about it.
Just so they really know your wishes.
Yes.
Right. Now, I know in another video we talked about the power of attorney. Now, again, I just want to make it very clear to our listeners that this is not a power of attorney.
No, it is not. This is only about health care. And it has nothing to do with signing financial documents or making decisions about where you might live or any education you might be able to have. It's only about health care.
And it is only when you cannot speak for yourself.
Yes. The healthcare provider is supposed to look for consent from you first. If you're unable to give consent, or if it's just not making sense, then they will go to your to a healthcare directive, a named proxy, or the next step is next of kin.
Okay. So how do we do one? Like, how do we create one of these?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, they're relatively simple. This is the type of document that lawyers are happy to help you with, but you don't actually need a lawyer to do it. Often when people go into the hospital that are suffering from certain conditions, the hospital may assist them in doing a healthcare directive right at that time, so the hospital understands what you want. There are forms online often that you can follow. In Saskatchewan, there isn't a particular form that you need to fill out, just as long as it's clear and you've signed it, preferably with a witness, then it will work.
Okay, so you do need a witness, or
preferably.
okay. So let's talk a little bit about medical assisted suicide. Now, does this take that into consideration?
Right. So in Canada, there are laws now that permit medical assistance in dying, and there are quite strict requirements if that is something that you are wishing to do. And you need to be able to give consent to medical assistance in dying at least 10 days in advance, and then also right up until the point when the assistance is provided. So that means that if you are suffering from dementia, or if you are in a coma, or somehow are unable to communicate, or it's believed that you don't have the capacity to communicate, at that point you can no longer consent to it. So you have to have capacity to be able to agree to medical assistance in dying.
Okay, so it's not even worth putting it into your
Health Care Directive.
No, because
No,
it won't
you can't address it in that, because they have to have your personal consent.
You have to be
Right up to the moment.
Right up to the
It can't
moment.
be written in advance.
okay.
At least that's the way the law is currently.
Okay. Anything else that we have to think about?
I think you've covered most of it with your questions. It's a document that I don't have as many clients completing a healthcare directive as we might see with wills or powers of attorney. It's more if you have very strong views about treatment that you don't want to receive. That is where I counsel my clients to definitely have a healthcare directive.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Again.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Again, so much more information to really consider as we're planning those very important estate planning documents. So thank you so much for your time. So I would love to hear from all of you who have watched this video, and tell me a little bit about what did you like about what you heard, what stood out for you, and how will this information help you prepare for your own retirement, and what are you going to start doing now? So please leave me your comments on these questions in our community group page. And in closing, keep on thinking about what you want and how you want to live the second half of your life. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm Marielle Gauthier with Redworks Coaching. Have fun creating your extraordinary life.